so much. I like how they call me Stephanie, but I'm from New York, so it's just Stephanie. Okay, so let me put my water down. All right. Our first panelist is Johannes Breit. He's based here in lovely Vienna, and he's CEO and co-founder at Storebox. He's an angel investor who believes that we learn the most from our setbacks. Please help me welcome Johannes. Our second panelist is Anna Elsa Karika. She heads up the Startup Support Division in Latvia at the Development Agency, and she's very excited to attend Vienna Up for Smart Cities next week. Please help me welcome Anna. Hailing from London, we have Sanghamrita Kara, who heads up the Multicultural Innovation Lab at Morgan Stanley. She's passionate about action for climate change and working to build a more diverse and inclusive world. Welcome. And last but not least, we have Horst Valentin. He's also a local based in Vienna. He's been working with SAP for over 20 years in human resources. And he believes that it's everyone's responsibility to fight for gender parity. And he's also on a mission to empower more men to be better allies. Please help me welcome Horst. Okay. So, thank you all for joining us today. We're going to be covering a lot of ground, so I will ask my panel for concise answers, and I might interrupt you if we're going off topic. Is that okay? Yeah? Cool. Great. So I want to start off by talking about unconscious bias. Recently, with the work I do with Founderland, I'm talking to investors all the time to try to get warm intros for the founders in my community. And recently, I was in a chat with an investor on the topic of bias. And he said, yeah, well, I mean, I can't afford to be prejudiced because the deals are just too competitive. And what struck me here is that this is a really well-intentioned, great guy who had no awareness of his bias, completely blind to it. So my thesis is really that our structures need to change from the top. And so what I want to do today is really talk about tips and tricks, practical tools that you can all use in your organizations, in your startups, and really in your own life. So I would like to ask Horst, I would like to start with you as our male ally. So you're leading the way as a mentor and a coach at SAP, helping men to become better allies. How might you have responded to this investor if you were in the room with him?
I guess my first reaction would have been, ouch, just to call it out. It doesn't mean to be big, but he realizes, I have seen you. You won't slip this behind me. And likely then I would have taken him or invited him for a one-on-one for a little bit more elaborated feedback session.
So is your strategy to sort of dig deeper and ask more questions to the person who's created some sort of, disruption in what you believe is fairness, or you're trying to make them awake in some way?
I believe that nobody wants to harm or intends to be a bad guy, but our biases don't help us. So being curious helps. Trying to understand more helps, and this very often opens the door for a more meaningful conversation, for feedback. But calling it out at the moment is important as well for this person, but also for the person who's affected by this microaggression.
Could you kind of help our audience understand what a microaggression is for those who don't know what it is?
Microaggression is something that, as the term is micro, is very small, but can have a huge impact. It would be like I would sending an email to a group of people, and I would say, hi guys, hi girls. Girls is not appropriate in that context. So this would be a microaggression. Or if I, by default, would ask a female colleague to take the notes or to plan the meeting. This is what I would, my favorite topic is introducing to each other. And when you enter the room and you are a male, typically you are seen as the boss. But if your female boss is next to you and they see her as the assistant, this is a clear microaggression.
Thank you. Sangham Rita, you're leading a program for marginalized women. How do you guide them in dealing with bias when they're confronted with it?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So I run what is called as a Multicultural Innovation Lab at Morgan Stanley. It's our in-house accelerator program that focuses on women and ethnic minority founders. And for me, it's some of the stories we hear. A great person in one of our portfolio companies told us this at some point. She happens to be a PhD in chemical engineering, has about 15 years of experience in, running in the energy industry. And then she went on to set up her company. And to your point earlier, the number of times it seems she was asked, so whose idea was it? So whose idea was it? And that is a microaggression. It's an unconscious bias. It's something that you have to face every day. And for me, that's what I'm driven by, creating those role models so that that question doesn't come up again, right? Whose idea is it for someone with her pedigree, right?
How did she answer?
She was shocked to silence, right? And over time, she's learned to say, why wouldn't it be other than me, right? So it's almost like learning to say that over time. And I think creating those role models, when you get a term sheet, when it converts into a term sheet and you get sort of bad terms in the term sheet, just because of the biases that are coming back, what can you as an ally do by actually helping the community? And I think those are the kind of things that I would really hope that I hear from more and more people. We've heard that a lot throughout today, but I think the more we can take those individual actions, call people out, make sure that we set up those role models, the better it is.
So it sounds like the practical tool here is when someone asks you a question that they wouldn't be asking someone else, like a man, or someone who doesn't look like them, or someone who looks like them, they wouldn't be asking that question. You can reflect it back to them, right? Ask them, what did you mean by this? Or how do you mean that? And you will be shocked to see how the person kind of goes silent or then becomes aware. Because as we're all saying in the many great discussions today, that actually a lot of people don't even know that they're doing it. It's just our brains have shortcuts to get us through the day, and that's what bias is. Johannes, over the last 12 months, you've intentionally worked to have more gender parity at Starbucks, and by disrupting your own bias. Can you share your experience on how you started this journey and why it's happened in the last 12 months?
I will try. First of all, congrats to the organizers of this great event, Lisa, Nina, and team. It's amazing to meet so many inspiring people today. I learned so much already on this panel about the aggression you mentioned before, for example. Really not an expert at all related to this topic, so I'm really happy to get your feedback, and I'm really looking forward to learn a lot. To reply to your question, maybe it would help to tell the story of Starbucks, right? Because I started Starbucks 6 years ago together with two co-founders, of course, two male co-founders, and everything went really good. Really well. Within the first few months, we hired like our first 10 employees. And I think number 12 was our first female employee at Starbucks, like 6 years ago or 5 years ago. And for us, it was like we had a simple answer to this, right? We thought, okay, there aren't any women out there in the tech industry, right? Today I know this is bullshit. Sorry for my French, but that's bullshit. We simply ignored more or less 50% of the global population. And I think one of the most important things afterwards happened. I read an article in Harvard Business Review about biased recruiting, right? And it was like, the article was about when you're going for a new job ad or you're looking for a new talent, you always create a shortlist in your head. And this shortlist consists of people who are very similar to you. So in terms of educational background, age, but also gender. And I thought, okay, I really want to disrupt my mindset. And I really want to change this at Starbucks at least. And I really tried then to implement a framework in my head of like extending this shortlist, and for every single male guy with tech or economic university degree in my age, I tried to add one female candidate, right? And surprise, surprise, I doubled those shortlists, and today we have around 50% women in our team, and I think at the moment 70% within our management team. Thank you.
That's incredible. Really. And so it sounds like what you were doing is making intentional effort on having more inclusive language in your ads, and then also disrupting your own bias by actively reaching out for one woman for every man that you were recruiting. Yes?
This was the start. Yeah, there are like several actions we did in terms of recruiting, because I think you really have to change everything top of funnel, right? So, for example, we changed the language first, but in the first place, I hired someone who is better on this topic than I am. That was the initial start. Afterwards, we changed the language in our job ads. Then, for example, we really tried to be more realistic on the requirements in the job ads, because, as we all know, men tend to overestimate themselves, right? And women are, of course, more self-critical. And we changed a lot, and it helped really. And we are doing like gender pay gap analysis and so on and so on and so on. So a lot of things are going on at Starbucks.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, I think I read somewhere that women apply to jobs where they have like 90% of the things on the job advertisement, and men apply to when they have 50%. So
I would say 0, right?
yeah, 0%. I can do it. Anna. So as I mentioned earlier, I believe that structures need to change from the top. You work for a government-supported development agency. Can you share with us why Latvia's startup ecosystem is considered the #1 startup-friendly ecosystem in the world? I mean, yeah, in the world, claims Sifted. And what actions have they taken to create a diverse and open ecosystem?
Yes, thank you so much for actually the nice words and promotion for Latvia. So I'm super happy to be here, and really thinking about the bias, as all of you actually mentioned. So I would say it's just not escapable. So I'm not going to say that, of course, in Latvia no one has this problem and the issue with the gender balance. But I would say that in Latvia we are very much led by example. So for example, also if you look at the statistics, then we are actually the only country in the EU where over 50% of the managerial positions are led by females. So in other countries, I would say it's maybe that there are less examples of that. So you have less female already in the position. But here, of course, in Latvia, we have very strong this ecosystem. So, for example, if you work at the startups, then most of the associations, most of the NGOs, and also in the public sector, if you look at who is at the front, then it's usually a female, actually. And then, of course, there are many male entrepreneurs. There's a team which is basically 50-50 in many cases. So I would say it's for the past years it has grown that, of course, you see that there are already females in the leading positions, and it's encouraging people from the young age already to actually study, to work hard to achieve the same place.
So the culture is really encouraging women from a very young age to follow an entrepreneurial path.
Yeah, I would say it's like you just see that the majority of people are, like you have achieved, let's say, great things, and you want to be like them, and it's not that hard actually. So And for example, if you look at already at the school systems and many organizations, then they have many programs which are specifically for ladies. So for example, there is also business incubators. There's also organizations like Riga Tech Girls, which I would like to highlight maybe, which is specializing for specifically teaching and encouraging more females to join the tech ecosystem, to join the business, to make their own initiatives and to be active generally.
That's really important. Okay, we're going to shift gears now to talking about how do we create a culture of inclusion in our organizations. As a working full-time mother, I have a lot of empathy for moms and also women who want to become moms who are kind of a bit scared that it might affect their career. So I kind of wanted to talk about this topic and ask Horst to start about how men could be better allies to mothers at work.
My answer is twofold. The first one is the quick one. That's my ask to all the male leaders: stop patronizing women. Don't say she would not appreciate like a promotion right now because she is about to become a mom. Nobody says this about a dad. Just stop patronizing. I think this would be my short answer. The little bit longer one is something we do. We offer to male leaders a series of discussions, a series of conversations. We call it Activating Men for Parity. And it consists on 4 main topics. One is how to become an inclusive leader. What does it mean to hold a privilege? And that privileges is not a zero-sum game. The third one is what are biases? And then the fourth one is how to become a mentor, but even more importantly, a sponsor and an ally. And in that series of discussions where we create kind of a safe space for men to exchange their thoughts, learn, make mistakes, but learn from them, we also discuss about this topic about how to deal with that situation. And the only answer is just stop it. This is the only valid answer.
What I think is what resonates with me here, Horst, is that you're talking about ongoing conversations. You know, we hear a lot about these unconscious bias trainings that every organization says, okay, I'm going to check that box. We're done. I got it. I'm not biased anymore. But guess what? It's an ongoing process. I always say I'm on a journey. I'm not an expert either. I spend a lot of time reading, educating myself, listening to marginalized voices so that I can be better. Because I want to be a better person in this world, and I want to create a more inclusive environment for my children to grow up into. So I think the key here is that things need to be ongoing. So I wanted to ask you one more question, a follow-up question to this. In your organization, are you leading this, are you spearheading this from a personal point of view, or is this structurally part of what SAP does to create this unconscious bias awareness ongoing?
I would say it's both. So there is a strong structural support for that. At the same time, it's my very close personal interest to support this, to change something for the good, but also to change something for my daughter, for example. I don't want that my daughter grows up in a world where she has different opportunities than men. So it was my call to action, my personal one.
Thank you for doing that work. Sangham Britta, Morgan Stanley is recognized as a leader in creating opportunities for the advancement of women and the promotion of racial equality. As a woman of color who's been working at Morgan Stanley, which is a bank, a pretty conservative one, for over 15 years, how have you seen their inclusivity efforts evolve, and what has your journey there been like?
Yeah, absolutely. I may be among the few people who can say this because when I joined Morgan Stanley, I have a background in statistics, and I was like the only girl in university who, after 6 or 7 years, so everyone knew me, she's the girl in the school. And when I came into Morgan Stanley, I was like, wow, there's so many women. That was my, the starting point into finance. But as I grow through the ranks, what I realized is there were fewer and fewer women at the senior levels. But the thing that has always stuck with me is, I think, this concept of inclusivity, of belonging, of being that person who everyone makes you feel and supports you for what you are. And when you don't know the way, there'll be somebody who'll actually help you through it. And I've had some brilliant male colleagues. One of my mentors, he tells me this, I'll walk into a room, I don't want you sitting at the corner in the room, I want you sit at the par ends, the ends of the table or on the other side. If somebody never told me that, I would have not known. Right. I had a junior person from a different department, male again, is like, Mitra, we want you to go ahead and get better in it. And why? Because then I can run the diversity program that I'm running and sort of tell people that you're a role model. And to have people to say that to you, to want to actually grow you, and that's a cultural thing. We had our CEO in the region is actually a woman. She spearheads it, and so I understood, having gone through the process, that actually it's so important to have those role models.
Is this a formalized sponsorship relationship?
Yeah. We've got all sorts of different versions, and I think I can say I've done sponsorships, mentorships, reverse mentoring, actually, which is a big thing, because as you learn a lot more from people who are coming through the generation right now than things that happen afterwards. We've got systematic programs for it. We call it the Step and Step Up program at the university level. We have an experienced professional programs. We're nowhere close to where we need to be, but that structural setup is there, but also more importantly, that cultural setup where everyone makes you feel that you belong is a big part of the culture, and that's what you need to feel successful. I don't want to remember that I'm a woman of color. I want to be remembered because I know what I'm doing is good, right? And as long as people are able to appreciate that, I think that works for me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anna, from all the things you've seen or done in supporting many startups in Latvia, if you could wave a magic wand to create one initiative that would make the startup ecosystem more inclusive than it already is, what would you do?
That is a really good question. And for one initiative, it would be really, really difficult to choose one. But I would say for the support programs, there are many good ones, but I would say it should be more maybe inclusive, that you look beyond, let's say what the company is applying, who's leading it. You look beyond, let's say if it's a woman, if it's a man, if it's a person of color, but you look at actually what are their values and what is the thing that they're developing. So for example, if we go a little bit beyond the gender balance and the Leading Today, Shape Tomorrow event, then I would say we do look actually more at the scientific addition and the added value of the companies. So we see that there is actually like this edge of innovation, and there is something really that is needed in the whole ecosystem, and not so much judging of who is leading the company, but looking at the actual value that they bring to the whole ecosystem.
And in terms of, we talked a little bit about this earlier, how it's true that there's a lot of gender equality in the Latvian startup ecosystem, but actually a lot of the CEOs are male. So how do you think that this can have more gender parity at these C-level executive levels?
Yeah, I think it all starts with basically who is doing what, this division of the tasks in a way. So it's usually seen that, of course, the females are typically in the more supportive parts. They are more like in the building of the ecosystem, of building the community parts. But I think they should also be encouraged more to take the leading role and to join the strategic parts as well. So it's not just like who is doing the presentation, who is like maybe building the work environment, but also who is making this, like the actual scientific work, the calculations and the strategic decisions. So again, of course, if you're in a company, if you have several co-founders, then also this the decision making should be equally, that each one has a voice, they have their say, they're listened to, and then of course you see what is like rationally the best decision, not who has the loudest voice and who's maybe most well known or most influential in the team.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like what Sangamrita was saying about you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room to have the most interesting thing to say. So thank you for that. Johannes, you talk a lot about learning from your mistakes or setbacks. Can you share one inclusion initiative at Storebox that failed?
First of all, it's so interesting. I learned so much. Talking about failures is hard, right? I think in the very beginning we thought everything will be very smoothly and easily, right? And as in one of the panels before, we heard that it's also about money. And I thought the mind change in our team will be implemented very easily, but it's really about investing money in this topic. And for example, we are really investing resources in hiring female talent, and it's not that easy because of everything we mentioned before. So I think one big mistake we made was that it's not that cheap, right? You really have to invest money to change something. Yeah.
Okay, let's dig a little deeper. So basically, originally you allocated not enough money. That's what you're saying, and then you realized it was a lot more. But what was there any sort of learning along the way in terms of, for example, in our conversation leading up to this, you talked about this, and you talked about it with the audience, about this bias you had, about that women, you didn't think that there was enough or any women working in the tech field, right? And then that got completely disrupted when you actually did the work to find these talents in your recruiting search. So was there another kind of, maybe it's not even a failure, but a learning that you had where your bias was just completely blown by an experience you had?
I think I still have some unconscious biases, right? I think it's very important to be realistic, and I think it's not possible to change the world overnight. Every single step counts. And we really try to get help from outside. For example, we have yearly gender pay gap analysis done by consultancies, for example, to really ensure that there isn't a gap between salaries of male and female salaries. So I think you really need, as in every other field or in every other department, you really need people who are good at this topic, right? And I'm not, for example. So I think that's key.
Yeah, I mean, we're all on a journey, and I think like it's incredible what you've done in the last 12 months. And when you told me about this gender pay gap initiative, I think that's incredible, and I think all organizations should do that. So thank you for the work you're doing there. Horst, in keeping on this thread of learning from our failures, what do you recommend people not doing when building inclusion programming?
I recommend not to focus on training only. It's like every training we attend, a leadership training, it's so motivating. And you come back home and you say, great, I have learned a lot, I will change everything. 3 weeks from that day, everything is gone and you're back in autopilot mode. So training is one part, training is 20%. But what you need to do is you need to make sure that you create habits, that you do it on a consistent basis, and you need to continue it for 21 days or preferable longer. 6 weeks is a great time to really work on the topic so that you can kind of create new neural pathways from the thing you just have learned. You wanted to debug your bias, you want to change the script you have, and therefore you need to have those new neural pathways. So do it, train it, practice it. What helps is that you have courage. There is not a place where it's comfortable and you can be courageous at the same time. So my recommendation is decide for being courage, accept that you're going to make mistakes, ask for feedback, be curious and learn from that.
Thank you. Sangamrita, do you have anything to add?
I think quite similar. I've got this time. I think believing in people, actually. I think believing that people can change, making sure that you're not having the conversation with the same people again and again, because there are some people who are already converted, right? Like they have actually believed the importance of diversity. So if you have the conversations with the same set of people, then you're actually not making a difference. So bringing others along on the journey and really truly believing in people that they would want to change.
Anna?
Yes, I will totally agree with actually the two previous colleagues. So what I would say is that you have to keep bringing new people to the table, new stakeholders, and to be open to hearing their perspectives. Because if you are working with the same people, if you don't, let's say if you stay in your country, if you don't attend conferences like this, then you could think everything's okay, everything's as it used to be, and there is no problem in the system. But then you look at other examples and you see that actually, no, there are small things, there are nuances that you wouldn't otherwise think about. So you kind of have to keep going out of the comfort zone, be open to these other perspectives, and be ready for discussions, actually, to think about what should be improved, what can be improved, and why are things the way they are and not different.
Thank you. Does anyone here on stage have a technique that they use when they're confronted by their own bias? So, for example, if I'm, I don't know, walking by myself and I see someone, a man in the dark walking by me, I feel nervous, right? And I check myself. I'm like, would I feel nervous if this was a woman? Why am I feeling nervous? And then I kind of like play out all the experiences I've had of why I'm feeling this way. So it's basically a really deep sense of awareness that I'm trying to build all the time. Is there something that you do in this way to actively, every day, create a habit of confronting your bias?
First of all, I think it's clever that in that situation you are careful, because we are still living in a strange world and we are still not there where we want to be. So I've heard it might take us 200 more years until we reach gender equity. So it's clever if you stay alerted from that perspective. At the same time, to sharpen your awareness, what I'm doing is I'm listening to my emotions. And whenever I get angry, annoyed, sad, I listen deeply. But in addition, I have trained myself to, whenever I feel like that's easy cheesy, then I become really alerted. It's like entering a roundabout with the car in a country you don't know, and they are typically driving on the other direction. At day 3, you feel so secure, and this is the day where you enter the roundabout in the wrong direction. So when I feel very safe, then I become very alerted.
I love that metaphor. With 2 minutes left, we're going to do a very fast lightning round. I'll start with you. What was your key takeaway from this discussion?
I think it's very important to reflect on yourself and educate yourself. I think education is key. And I think it's also key to do baby steps, small steps, and every single steps count. And try to be the change you want to see in the world, right? I think that's it.
I love that. We always talk about baby steps at Founderland. Baby steps. It's our internal motto. Anna, what about you? What's your key takeaway?
I would say that you have to kind of sharpen your awareness of the environment. That, like, again, it's like a quote, but basically you have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. So you have to always kind of have this moment where you stop and you think about what's around you, and then go with it. So see what is the perspective you have, and what is the perspective that maybe others in this room have even. So kind of.
So a deep empathy, basically. Sangamrita?
I think mine is be like my fellow panelists. That is my takeaway. So keep learning on the unconscious biases, be a great ally, challenge yourself and challenge the system like what you've done at Starbucks. And we know what utopia does look like as you think about Latvia and its own ecosystem. So for me, that's my biggest takeaway.
My biggest one is the insight that in Latvia there is a 50% leadership share already. So if Latvia can do that, there is no excuse for any company, for any country not to achieve that. So don't let your bias fool you.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. This was an incredible panel discussion. I really appreciate your honesty and for trusting me as your moderator. I'm optimistic about our shared journey forward, and thank you again, female founders. This has been an incredible day so far. So keep watching the panel discussions this afternoon and the pitches, and yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.